Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Renee Robinson. I'm the industry programmer here at the festival. And thanks, Ted. Thank you. I am so pleased to see such a full crowd today, although I have to say I'm not surprised because we have an extremely prolific and esteemed panel with us today. We are in a room with greatness this morning, and I think you guys are really in for a treat. We're going to try to delve as much as possible into some of the information that sort of deciphers the process of financing and packaging, moving within different types of projects from indie to studio, and we really have some very, very esteemed people on our panel today. I will turn over to our moderator, but just to let you know what's happening for the rest of the day, we do have our mogul session with Alison Thompson. That's over at the Glen Gould directly after this, so that's at 1 o'clock. Our entire day today is really curated for you to look at the many aspects and the complex multiplicities about financing. So you'll see threads throughout each panel, and hopefully by the end of the day there will be linkages, and then there'll be quite a few takeaways on how the structures compete, contrast, conflict, and how they work together, or creating different types of frameworks for financing. So without further ado, because I know we have a lot to cover, I'm going to turn over to our moderator, Sydney Levine, who is an international film business writer with IndieWire, the founder of Sydney's Buzz, and a consultant to many producers. Sydney, over to you.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Thank you, TIFF. Thank you, audience, and thank you, panel, for coming here. I am so impressed with this panel. We could spend forever on each one of them, so I understand why you came. We'll try and go quickly over it. I'm going to start with the introduction. Aside from myself, who writes, she said, you understand that, I do consulting, and I have to pitch for myself. We consult. You're welcome to come up and get a card, and I will also have this panel on my blog so you can get links of their articles, find out more about these projects if you go to the blog. Sydney's Buzz on IndieWire. So we have here, starting over there, is Andrew Eaton from Revolution, and next to him is Brian Oliver from Cross Creek. The title of this panel is Financing and Packaging from Indie to Studio. And I want to make note that these two men have done what looks like a studio film, Rush, which is the runaway hit, I think, of this festival, and I do believe of the box office coming up in North America. And also internationally, it has sold everywhere in the world by now. It looks like a major. But Andrew is actually introducing the British way of making films, because we all know the majors do tent poles, they make lots of money from games, everything else, we won't go into it. They have made an indie film of $50 million looking like a major studio film. And as usual, it takes someone from outside of Hollywood to reestablish models for films, and that's what we're all looking to find out. How can we make our films on a model that get out into the public? That is really the issue of this. So after Andrew and Brian speak, we're going to move into the next person. Actually, it's going to be Rena Ronson here, the woman in the middle, who does packaging. She's repping many films here. I want to give her a plug. But she is, let me find it. She's repping Love, Hate Ship, Love Ship. She has a Joe Swanberg film. She's repping Can a Song Save Your Life, which is being sold internationally, by the way, by a company called Exclusive, British based in US, I believe, who also is the international sales agent for Rush. She's representing The F Word, Night Moves, and The Sacrament. And I have to pitch this. Yesterday, LA Times front page, she has the article on Wajda, which showed last year in Telluride, and in Venice Film Festival. It's a Saudi Arabian movie made by a Saudi Arabian woman director. And she has a quote in here. It's truly an amazing article because it moves us into looking at how to make truly independent films hit first page of LA Times. That segues into our next guest here, Paul Miller, who is head of the Doha Film Institute. A few years ago, the Middle East moved into financing films, trying to bring voice to their filmmakers, and he has extended this outward into the entire world. He'll be speaking also, and he has films here, including Mohammed, my eyes, I can't read, Malas's Ladder to Damascus. It's in the Contemporary World Cinema section. Yasmila Javich, sorry, I think I'll get this up. For those who can tell no tales in special presentations. Both films were co-financed by Doha Film Institute. And the grant recipients of Doha grants include Bastardo here, and My Love Awaits Me. So we have this span, and then coming back home, San Francisco Film Society, which we all know from the San Francisco Film Festival, does much more than have a festival. Ted Hope has recently taken the reins. We all know Ted Hope. His truly free film blog is very popular. He has one now that I hope he'll talk about new ways of financing films. And I hope that is called staged financing. And I hope he'll get a chance to talk about that, which will close this panel. We have maybe 30 minutes to speak, and we'll have 10 to 15 minutes Q&A. So I'd like to start with Andrew, because he's taken a major concept and created an independent film. So if you could give us the arc of how you put this together, the financing. We don't need to go into, and Ron Howard, who's a major, but we don't need to go into the story and whatever you like. A few minutes.
It's like just doing a stand-up routine. I do. It's an unusual hybrid because it's a $50 million film, like you said, Sydney, but it's and it's hopefully a commercial project. But it was put together with Brian. Brian basically put out the money to make it and came on board. But it's using the same model that most of us have used our whole careers, which is a pre-sale model where you go and sell every territory that you can. And unusually, Ron Howard was prepared and happy to come to the AFM 2 years ago, which is unusual for an A-list Hollywood director to come and do that and pitch to buyers. So we were able to put the film together. And we honestly didn't know until after the AFM what budget we could actually get. We had an idea in our heads of what we would like to make the film for, but until Brian took the film with exclusive to the AFM, we only could then figure out how much it was worth. So, but it's the same model that we've all used for many years. So you go and try and pre-sell the film, you have the sales estimates, you try and figure out how much value would be, you try and maximize all the soft money, in this case from Germany and the UK, to soften the blow for Brian's investors. And then you put it together. But I have to say, it's nice that you say, Sydney, it's the British model, but actually, in this case, the reason the film got made was because of private investors that Brian has in Cross Creek who are US investors, and that's how it happened.
And Brian, Cross Creek has lots of deals. I hope you're willing to talk about how you dared to put $2 million at the very beginning. Talk about how you
He will deny that because I get him into trouble with his investors when I tell that story.
Oh, but it's published already, and you can read it in Variety.
You don't believe it. You know, our model is, like you said, we have a private equity fund, and so once we get pre-sale estimates, we put together a preliminary financial model of how much equity we will put against, pretty much against domestic is what it ends up being. And then we, like we said, we took it to the marketplace. So between the collateral from the pre-sale contracts and the soft money, and then the equity we will contribute, we determine what our all-in budget will be. And to answer your question, Cross Creek has an output deal with Universal, which is a multi-picture deal where we fully finance the movies. We bring them to Universal, they distribute them, which allows movies like this to go to the the markets AFM can, et cetera, and be able to really sell with a wide release major distribution deal in place, which this movie and many other movies that we're doing, I don't think would support the budget that they need without that in place. So it's kind of key for us.
And did you have you obviously have a budget range. What is the budget range for your equity fund?
The budget range, I mean, we're looking to do movies that will be running through our Universal deal, and under that deal, it's on the low end 15 million and on the high end 65 million.
And you also have a deal with the international sales agent that took it to AFM?
Yeah, we have a co-financing sales deal with with Exclusive Media, and under that, the deal that we have with them, they co-finance with us, so they'll split the equity, and then we do a kind of divert sales deal on the back end as well, and so they'll take it to the market and sell it, and then it'll go through Universal Domestic.
And do you know how much, well, of course you do, how much did they sell at AFM in 2011? Was it 30 million?
I think we sold 33 million.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple contracts that took a little bit longer, but overall, I think the sales numbers ended up at about 33 million.
And then I read somewhere, I don't remember where, that another 15 million came in somewhere from somewhere else?
There was 16 million of equity put in between us and Exclusive. And then there was 12 in soft money with the UK-German co-production.
Mm-hmm. And it was a German co-production.
It was a UK-German co-production, yeah.
Now, packaging, you had Ron Howard, who is a studio name that you hired, and you got the talent. I'm segueing a bit into Rena because UTA also does packaging of talent. How did you attach your talent? Did you use an agency? Was it Ron Howard that attracted people?
The Ron Howard thing came about really because the Ron Howard thing came about because Peter Morgan and Ron Howard worked on a film together called Frost Nixon, and actually I found an old email the other day where Peter said to me saying, "I'm having breakfast with Ron Howard." Paul Greengrass, the English director, was going to direct originally, and then he left the project. And Peter said, I'm having breakfast with Ron Howard tomorrow. I might mention the script. I'm sure he won't like it and won't want to do it. So you just never know. And Ron was looking for something to do. He's a big sports fan. His friendship with Peter was it's one of those lucky breaks you catch as a producer where people knew each other from before. And so Ron came on board very quickly. And then actually the cast came together because people wanted to work with Ron. We really lucked out by getting Chris Hemsworth, who at the time was just becoming Thor. And nobody really knew what that journey he was going to go on. And so, and actually he he put himself on tape and sent us a tape because he really wanted to do the film. So there was no real, it was all the agents were involved, but it was a series of fortunate events.
Rena, I know you're repping films here from large to small, but I know you also do packaging, and I know you also come out of international film sales, so you have an understanding of that structure too. Could you talk a little about how you come by the films you do?
I co-head the independent film division at UTA. So what the film divisions, these independent divisions do at agencies is we're almost producerial advisors. We work with the talent, the writers, the directors, the financiers, the producers. And so it does help to speak all the languages so that you know exactly what you're talking about in terms of how you put these films together. But I think what's interesting of what these guys said is financing a film, the whole international value and how do you come up with a budget is that it really depends on the type of film. There are low budget films we work with, $2 million films, and then there are $50 million films that can all be put together independently. What differentiates the 50 and the 15 and above is that, as Brian suggested, you typically will need some kind of a studio because you're not going to get a full 50 million out of the international market. There's a bit of a cutoff. So what happens is when you're valuing these projects, and there are two ways to go. Either somebody writes a check for a $2 million film, a $1 million film, because they believe in the filmmaker, or you're going to have to go this route of how am I going to figure out how to make this movie? It's worth X amount overseas. I can shoot it in this tax state. I can get a bank deal, to cover the costs. So what's my gap? And that's the equity. That's that, clever part that you have to always figure out how much that equity investor is willing to risk, because at the end of the day, it's the riskiest money. It comes out after the bank and after fees, but it owns the project. So from what we do ultimately is work with everyone to figure out what the best way to finance a film is. I will say, from a packaging and talent perspective, it all starts with the director. It really starts with the script, but it is the director. The director is sort of the visionary. So I think when Ron Howard came on, of course, it became, Ron Howard's vision is going to figure out who those actors are going to be. Similarly, we had a very small. We have a filmmaker who is a commercial director, Alfonso Poyart. He is a big commercial director. Had never directed a feature film before. There was a film called Solace that was at New Line, studio film. They couldn't figure out how to make it, and it was too expensive. So it went into turnaround. The producer came to us. We put Alfonso on, and because he is such a visionary, he attracted Anthony Hopkins and Clive Owen, and we were able to then take that package, bring it to a sales agency, which was Film Nation, who took it to a market. They pre-sold $23 million of the film. We figured out what the soft money was and what the gap was, and the film was financed with no domestic in place. So now we have this $26 million film, forget where it'll end up, with no domestic. That's unusual, but it's, from our perspective, we like that because now we can go to the marketplace and find the best home for the film. And that becomes, one way to make an independent film without the domestic in place.
About the films that are here, have you packaged those?
Yes, I mean, all the films that, most of the films that came through us, either we work with another agency on because we each bring an element to the table and we figure out how to get the film financed. But they were all traditional models. It was all about how do you value the budget and what's the international worth. It doesn't mean when you're dealing with a $5 million and under film you have to do pre-sales. Oftentimes an equity investor will come in and just want to know what it's worth. So as long as you have sales estimates and your soft money that you can see, and a trusty sales agency, because at the end of the day it's got to be someone who delivers what they say, because anyone can come up and say, I can sell $5 million, and they don't. And therefore they will not get the next film with that investor. But there are a group of sales agents that investors like to work with, and just by virtue of putting up estimates, there is a relationship where there's a certain trust level that if the budget is reasonable, you don't even have to pre-sell it. That's typically for the under $5 million budget. Anything over, you really need to know. You want to validate those estimates by the pre-sales.
I think that it's still a rarefied atmosphere for, I haven't taken a tally of all you, but I imagine there's some novice filmmakers, and the idea of getting to William Morris or UTA or CAA, or to getting even to an Andrew Eaton or to an equity fund, I think that probably is a rarefied atmosphere. So to bring it down a notch, maybe you need to be networking on another level that gets you up there. That is networking in workshopping your film or in getting grants. And so I think at this point, Doha and San Francisco Film Society are somewhat similar because they're year-round programs that are working with filmmakers who are more or less beginning their careers. Am I correct in this? Could one of you speak to your...
Yeah, I mean, the Doha Film Institute is, it does have an educational workshop training division, which is called the Gulf Film Development, but it does exclusively work with Gulf filmmakers. We do, though, have a grants division, which has recently expanded from beyond what's called the MENA region, which is Middle East, North Africa, to being a global fund. But it is restricted to first and second time filmmakers, which is the good news to answer your question. And it's really trying to find the best out there in the world. And we work, it's a sort of open application in only that you have to just find somebody who works with me and with the team to sort of pitch your project, and we can give you a sort of a pre-selection form. So it's pretty simple. And we're just looking for the best, good stories well told. from around the globe. And that ties in with, we also run two film festivals. The film festival Cumra in March, which is newly branded, is also geared to first and second time filmmakers. So we have programmers globally looking, again, for the best from every region. So that we do film financing as well, but to answer your question specifically, that area of what the Doha Film Institute does cater to unsolicited material. Although it's, I have to say, I was at a panel yesterday, it's reasonably easy to get a lawyer, and a lawyer can represent your script. So it's not that big a barrier to entry to access one of these people.
Yeah, unsolicited material is always not welcome, but if that's very interesting. If you have the proper lawyer, you have the proper solicitor.
Because the studios or financiers just worried about copyright and whether you really own or have a right to represent the screenplay. So as I said, it's really actually a small hurdle.
It brings me, you must have some ties, however. Do the projects have to have anything in common with Middle Eastern?
No.
Nothing?
No. I mean, great if they do, but it's not a prerequisite, and it doesn't have to shoot there. And that goes with our film financing, our co-financing department. We look for two types of projects. We look for culturally important stories that are well told, and they're, I would say, financially responsible, as in they don't have to be geared to making a profit or lots of money, but they need to be, they can't be throwing money down the drain. And then the other side is the more sort of commercial, sort of double bottom line, which is stuff that, will hopefully make money, but also be, again, a good story well told. We're very keen to create, I would say, a pan-Arab film financing ecosystem where there's enough money in that region that filmmakers shouldn't have to go outside the region in the future to make their film. They should be able to make them within the region. We're very keen to sort of educate that part of the world into private equity funds, to investment banks, to gap financing, to educating local banks into getting involved in debt financing. So,
are you working with UTA or other agencies?
We do. We speak with them all the time, and we're always trying to find the right project. Mm-hmm. And they have access to good material, and luckily not just U.S. I mean, they also have access to international stuff, which is of course interesting to us.
Could you speak a little about the films that are here?
Yeah, we have 4 films. 2 of them, Ladder to Damascus and For Those Who Tell No Tales, are films that we co-financed. One is a Syrian film. Mohammed Malis is a sort of celebrated Syrian filmmaker. It was made during the uprising, so at incredible risk to the filmmakers. That was, I guess you would call an equity deal. There was 3 equity partners, including us. Relatively low budget. There were no pre-sales on that. For Those Who Tell No Tales was some soft money. She's a Bosnian filmmaker, so there was some soft money, there was some smattering of private equity and our money, and they did have a sales agent on board. The other 2 are grants. One's almost an experimental film, which My Love Awaits Me by the Sea. The other one is a drama. And these were, I don't remember the details of the financing, because when we give a grant, it's just a grant. So it's, here's your money, good luck. And we do nurture them through the process in terms of advice and stuff, but we really do empower them to, make the best of that. And then their grantees become part of an alumni, and they're invited back to the Doha Film Festival, where they're introduced to industry professionals. They can pitch the project again or future projects. And then every festival like here, we have a sort of reunion. So we try and nurture them in that way. But we try and empower them at the same time.
Is the grant for development or production or post?
For the Middle East, it's for development, anything really. For the rest of the world, it's production or post-production only.
Rena, could you talk a little about Wajda? I know it's old already, but it's such a new subject, and it is printed about. So
it's not that old. It's getting released in a couple of weeks in U.S. and North America. Wajda was, it was 4 years ago actually in Abu Dhabi, and I went to a film festival and met this extraordinary Saudi Arabian woman who I was there. It was a party. It was the end of the festival. We were leaving the next morning, but I saw that a woman won the screenwriting award, and I thought that was fantastic. And she wrote this story, and I just walked up to her and I asked, "What's the story?" And she said it was about a girl who wanted a bicycle and couldn't have one, and that was it. I said, I want to help you. And in my, in my world, what I love so much that we talked about is, we work hard on these big budgeted films or tough films that have stars and more seasoned directors. But it's because of that I love to do this, which is helping these, nurture new filmmakers in the world, which is what we do in the indie department. But she wrote the script. I asked if I could read it. She emailed it to me, and that began this journey, which took a couple years. And we tried to figure out, well, how can we make this? It can't be in English. It has to be authentic. She really wanted to shoot it in Saudi Arabia. I had never done anything like this before because we mostly deal with American films, English language, or European, that have film funds. But one of the things we thought about, which I think was interesting, that Brian brought up is, Germany has a really solid co-production. Europe really does. There's access, so much more access than there is certainly in the United States in their regional and European funds. And we figured out a way to make it a German-Saudi co-production. And by bringing in Razor Films as producers, they were able to tap into all the sophisticated money that's out there for great material. I was then introduced to a woman who worked at Rotana, who was presumably the Oprah Winfrey of the Middle East. And it was right after Ramadan, and she came to LA, and my job was to get them to invest. And it took about a year, and then once we got them to commit, it was about, can we have your money now? Now it was about accessing the money. But what we figured out was, Haifa was an extraordinary person because, not only an incredible writer-director, but she is a go-getter. So she went to Saudi Prince. She spoke about the film. It was culturally important. And the goal of putting this film together was how you can combine, there were no pre-sales, but how you combine soft money and opportunity in a great story. And when you have a great story, it transcends it all. Everyone wants to get involved in that. We got lucky in that Rotana became a big investor, and we had German money. We brought in Match Factory, a really fantastic foreign sales agency that also is very filmmaker driven and oftentimes likes to work with first-time filmmakers. And the film got shot in Saudi Arabia, and can check online. You should just, she's an extraordinary woman, what she did. She had to shoot the film oftentimes in a van because she was not allowed outside in public to shoot because she shot in Saudi. But an extraordinary film, extraordinary woman, and a great filmmaker.
It's an exciting story, and it said at the end that now, because, I don't know if it's because of the movie, women are now allowed to ride bicycles in Saudi Arabia. Very exciting. So this is the kind of film that I know Ted Hope just loves. Ted Hope is always trying to figure out new ways to get those indies not just made, because maybe too many indies are made, but financed and out there into distribution. There's a whole network with the San Francisco Film Society that they have films here. They have 1982 by Tommy Oliver, which is, I hope.
Who's in the house? Tommy, where are you?
Yes, he is somewhere.
Where? All right.
Really exciting, really exciting. He's part of a whole network in France that called U.S. in Progress in Poland, and he won the prize in the Champs-Élysées Film Festival for post-production money. And so he started the network in San Francisco and all of their network connections, and he's moving on into the European network. I know the networks, if someone is in San Francisco Film Society or Doha or William Morris, I keep saying that, I'm sorry, to me.
That was many years ago.
UTA, I am sorry. Isn't that weird? I just see you and remember that. Anyway, I think these networks are so important, and that's why TIFF is so important. You need to get into these networks, and you're here, you're in it. That's your first credential to have the network. And I would worry about it closing because there are so many films. So Ted, talk about not only San Francisco Film Society, but your vision beyond. Thank you.
Well, my background is as an independent producer, like Paul's too, and I've always wanted to make a very specific type of film, which I would say is ambitious and about the world we live in, that tries to, push film culture forward. And you start to see, over the last 20 years, how that has grown more and more difficult, particularly being in America, which is a market-driven entertainment economy. Like, whether filmmakers think of it or not, you create to sell, and that ultimately corrupts your work in some way. And when the economy collapsed, I think many filmmakers across the world started to kind of shift from that ambitious type of filmmaking to how do you just get it made. And personally, though I've seen a tremendous number of great movies, I think we also start to suffer from the content that is designed to sell first and foremost, as opposed to advance the culture. And that became a bigger concern for me as an independent producer, so that when the San Francisco Film Society reached out to me and asked me would I be interested in working with them, I leapt at that chance, because the San Francisco Film Society has funded, in addition to Tommy's film that's here, we were also responsible for some of the financing of the last two Sundance Grand Jury prize winners, Fruitvale Station and Beasts of the Southern Wild, as well as through our documentary fund, films like Cutie and the Boxer and American Promise, and a wide variety of movies that get to have that privilege of stepping outside the market demands as a place to start and try to focus on their own ambition. And I think we have to look at what the structure of our film industry is and ask, how is it responsible for the content that we create? And frankly, I think our packaging and financing structure are now designed for what, in my opinion, is failure, because the system is designed not to make films that are generally ambitious and are trying to do something new, but can mitigate risk. And it encourages quantity over quality. So I felt it was my responsibility, having had the privilege for a long time to make films of a unique sort, to try to help build that structure. And there are a tremendous number of things that we can do. Like, it's always surprising to me that when we talk about packaging, what is that really about? We're trying to find the actors that have guaranteed economic value in certain territories, so it can open a movie. And I think anyone, whether you're in the industry or not, can look at and see how that's generally not true. Sure, it's helpful to bring a movie, like I'm dying to see Can a Song Save Your Life? Not just because of the great cast, and not just because it's John Carney's return to what he did in Once, but it's also a film that has music and a bigger experience and all of that to it. But frankly, even having Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo in your film, John Carney, doesn't guarantee it an audience these days. And our entire structure of the film ecosystem is still predicated on concepts that don't apply to us anymore. That the packaging and financing is for the days of pure studio as opposed to the days of independence. That therefore, when there was a scarcity of content, and when you were able to control that content through direct distribution, and you could focus people's attention to those movies, and that's not the world we live in. We live in a time of abundance of content, and the ability to access content anywhere, anyhow, on any device at any time, and everyone's complete distraction from that content. So what can we do to actually start to package and finance in a way that encourages ambitious and diverse cinema in different ways? What would a structure like that be? Because frankly, I think the one we have right now is incredibly broken. Sydney referenced at the beginning a blog post that I did yesterday that was something like the benefit of being in the Bay Area is, you get to meet people that don't work in the film business, right? New York and LA, frankly, I was stuck in that kind of echo chamber of how we were doing it. And in the Bay Area, you know, everyone talks about how do you institutionalize risk? How do you be able to provide, well, this was all ultimately about stage financing. How can we create a structure that kind of mirrors some of what the VC world has been doing to allow people to deliver a proof of concept and enhance it along the way, and to be able to pivot when cultural or economic or political situations change? You know, and how can you actually do the most important thing that I think we can do for the film industry these days is actually have a reward that's equal to the risk. That financiers, you can't go out and say, well, actually, we have one of them here, but you generally can't say, what's the film story that's equivalent to the early stage investors in Facebook and Google, right? That just doesn't happen anymore until we can tell the story of more investors who actually see a 10 times or greater return on their investment. We won't actually have enough capital, I think, in the system to really have that ambitious, diverse film culture that I want, even if more movies than we could ever possibly consume are still being produced. And the key to that is, how do we make sure that the investors and the creators are the direct financial beneficiaries of the work that they create?
Can I introduce? Am I allowed to?
I told Mina to stop me from ranting.
I'm not stopping you from ranting. I agree and disagree. I think that your point is interesting. I think that it's not always true, though, for a couple of reasons. One, when you're making big budgeted films, it's not like you have, look, it's a very unusual art form. It's not a painting where one person has to buy it. It is a business where you need many people to buy tickets for them to see their money back. So when you're dealing with that bigger budgeted film, it is important that you need to get the public to go see that movie. It just is. When you're dealing with the lower budgeted films, which is I think what you're referring to, hopefully, and I think bringing up the Carney film is interesting because that was at a studio before and they couldn't get it made, or they couldn't figure out how to get it made. So they got it out of turnaround, and these were the actors he wanted. I mean, there were many other actors that were circling, but I think it was also about who he wanted in his film. The director.
And you can count on me on buying a ticket.
And there you go. But the lower budget films, I think it is a bit of a quandary because there's the middle sector films where you've got to figure out who's willing, are the investors willing to take a risk or not. But if it doesn't look, and Brian, you can respond to this, if it doesn't make sense on paper from a financial point of view, they'll put their money in some other investment. So it's a tricky balance.
But the thing that's interesting to me is if you have a really good story, it doesn't matter who's in your movie. Really, you have movie stars to mitigate risk. You have Tom Hanks in case you're making a bad movie. You don't have Tom Hanks. You don't have Tom Hanks to make a good movie. Once is a movie that didn't have Tom Hanks in it and did really well. And so that's why people ask for movie stars, is because they think, well, if it screws up, at least I had Tom Hanks and it wasn't my fault. I had Tom Hanks.
But there is, we now have the potential for something much different than what we've all experienced, because the industry and what we practice on the independent level, even at the level of Rush, is still films that are designed for mass market. And now we have this incredible opportunity where we no longer have to participate in that way. We actually can make films that are designed for niche audiences. And that's an entire game changer. It's an entire change in how we have to approach the process all along the way. And sometimes, although, star value and packaging might mitigate risk, it's not going to necessarily solve the compulsion of when you're faced with 50,000 feature film titles generated on a global basis. And, America is still the #1 consumption market for another year and a half, thought to be able to handle somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 plus titles theatrically a year, otherwise 1% of the global supply. How do you create the urgency for people that know that they can tune in anytime, anywhere, anyhow, on any device, to deliver this exchange of 90 minutes of time? Because in this world of abundance, there's one thing that we can't manufacture more of right now, which is time, right? And we need a better return on our investment of our engagement as audience members than just to be entertained or just to see the familiar faces. We look for new experiences, like in Wajda, or something that we haven't seen before, as much as we seek out familiarity, which has been a big deliver. But that opportunity of programming now, packaging and financing for the niche audiences is a real game changer for the abundance of filmmakers out there trying to figure out, how do I get my first or second film made? Sometimes it's stop thinking as wide, look at how to trigger that engagement.
So you're talking about funding a film like a VC, a venture capitalist, where you have to reach certain stages, and then you can trigger more money if they're interested. Of course, there's Kickstarter. I mean, I gave my money to this one about Alice Guy Blache because I want to see about the first woman director. So I gave my $50. And then when it reached a certain mass, all of a sudden everybody finished the payment. And in 4 days it was done. Like that?
And crowdfunding is certainly an element of stage financing. But when you think through the windfall that can come from it, particularly in that instance of the story that you mentioned, stage financing right now in America is best, in the film business, is best observed in the documentary film world, and which has levels through grants and different foundations, elements of stage financing. And as a result, what has happened? You have gender proportionate representation amongst the director class. Over 50% of documentaries made are now directed by women. In the narrative world, how many is it? 6%, right? And what happens? What happens is we have an industry that's geared for that looks at leadership, directors, based on what is a display of confidence, otherwise known as arrogance. Harvard Business study came out and showed that the traits of confidence, and it's on my blog, often linked to psychoses, and the most evident in males, which as a gender have been trained to boast about what they can accomplish in another way, with no proof of that. So if we have the ability to deliver that proof along the way and earn, through our merit, well deserved, it becomes a game changer, and that 6% will rise significantly.
I didn't mean for this to be like pro-female, but I mean, especially if funds are being granted by international bodies of representation of the population, and the population's 50%. Okay, enough of that.
And women generally throughout the world control the money, too.
Well, we spend money. We're really good at determining what movies we're going to go see and take our husbands or boyfriends to. It's not all boys, and that's why Hollywood's floundering also, because all boys don't go see all the movies. They do their little telephones, too, and stuff. So anyway, oh, please, someone else talk, or we'll open it up to you all.
I think it's a good time to open it up to questions, right?
So we're going to open it up. I hope I can see some hands. Questions? Yes.
Please say your name when you talk. Tell us who you are.
And here's a mic.
Hello, everyone. My name's Stefan Hogan. I work for Edison Entertainment, a television production company here in Toronto. I have a question. I think Ms. Ronson touched on it a bit, but you all have a view, I'm sure. You said when you are making you're making projects for under $5 million. I was wondering what would be kind of an action plan that you would suggest for someone along those lines? Like, what are the steps to getting something at that budget or below made?
And I randomly said under 5. Mm-hmm. There's 3 to 5 and under 2. You can break it down, but here are the steps of any film, really. That is, no. Not any film, because I'm contradicting myself here, because there are those films that are like the Wajdas where it is not contingent on casting and foreign sales. It's really more the passion and how you structure it. But a feature film, you still always want to know, what can I make it for? And, you know, I'm sorry, Ted, but I have to say it. You have to know what the value of your film is if you're asking someone for money today. That's what you have to do. Otherwise, it's the way it rolls. So what that means is you want to value your international, because independent financing is really based on the international value, and then that domestic piece, which, you know, varies from 0, straight distribution deal, and up. So your international value is going to dictate what the range of that budget's going to be. And the way you get your international value is with your package. So do you have names or do you not? Do you have incredible actors that are not big recognizable names? Do you have a filmmaker that's done an incredible short, a great commercial director, another feature? All of that is part of the package. And by the way, a great script, because it does start with a script. The story, is it fresh, is it original? And at that point, you can have someone read it, an international sales agent, typically, or if you have relationships with buyers, and they'll tell you, well, it's worth 400,000, or they'll say it's worth 3 million, or they'll say, if you bring XYZ actor, I can get you 4. Otherwise, really, I don't know, maybe 1 million. And then you have at least an understanding of the value. Then you figure out, well, where am I going to shoot this? Because I really want to take advantage of either a tax deal or some kind of soft money. So you look at all the opportunities. Where should the film? Where's it set? Is it a lot of interiors? Can I shoot it anywhere? Or is the setting New York? It has to be New York. Is it California? Can you mirror California? Can you go to Toronto and shoot New York? And you figure out what you can get. And then you look at that little piece of gap and the rest of the estimates, and you figure out your finance plan. That's when you go to equity. That's when you start. The alternative is you go to equity first, you bring them on as a producer, they become part of your team, and they do exactly what I said.
That's how it's been done for a very long time.
And it's how it's still being done.
And it's how it will be done for also a long time going forward. But
till Ted comes up with the next
let's talk through what a different scenario will be, right? So when I first started coming to the Toronto Film Festival, if I had a film that multiple buyers wanted in North America, I was confident that I would get a fair price of 50% of my negative cost for my movie for North American rights on a 30-year, let's say, license. 15 years ago, that was about 30% that it dropped to. But that was okay, because international value went up over 100% frequently for what we were doing. That was what my company, Good Machine, was predicated on. Then, about 10 years ago, that dropped to about 25%. I would say that if you look at the wonderful films that are here at the festival, all worthy of audiences of one sort or another, and you look at what gets bought by the end of the year, licensed, you will see that to be about 10% of negative cost, 10%. Meanwhile, you tell me what the foreign sales business really is when Italy, Portugal, Spain, Greece cannot buy anything, right? Where France and Japan buy rarely anything, right? You watch the foreign value just drop out of the picture, right? And meanwhile, what are we doing? We're making a single product that we think it's smart enough to just repurpose for different platforms. Well, we don't recognize that we have this incredible, unique thing called cinema that has a shared emotional response in a room. And we're satisfied by saying we'll get 300 people here, and our big profit point will be selling a 15-cent bag of popcorn for $6 and a bunch of sugar water in the same sort of way. That's all we do with our work. Why not, when you create your film, look through all the different revenue streams that you can build into your film, many different ways that can be done, and I'm happy to take an hour and a half and kind of talk through what the 27 are that I've identified of that. Why not look at all of that and look at how you can aggregate an audience instead of just gathering people around your Facebook page or your Twitter feed for your movie and then having to rebuild it and reinvent the wheel again. I also had promised I wouldn't talk fast, and I was going to speak slow and calmly, but why not try to build an audience that becomes a community that you can return to, and you can give them a better return on the investment of their engagement in the long term? You know, like, I get frustrated. I was very happy to give Spike Lee, you know, money on his Kickstarter campaign because he's changed my life with some of his films. I want him, even though I don't like 2 out of 3 of his films, I love the third one tremendously, and I would give him $100 a year if I could have access to everything that he created, and he created more. And I could probably name 25 filmmakers I'd be really happy to have a deeper relationship with, just like they do in the music world, frankly, right now, which I understand is getting about 12% of their revenue from direct sales from the artists to the fans, not from the labels to the fans, but direct engagement fees. Why don't we look at a bigger picture of what packaging is, and why don't we start the process of trying to determine what all those different revenue streams are, like they do on the studio. Brian does that for his movies on a studio level. On the independent level, why don't we do that same sort of thing and figure out how, if we come to Toronto and Rena's not able to sell our film, the rare film that doesn't sell for a large multiple of its costs because she's selling it, if it doesn't happen, why don't we figure out how to make sure we don't squander the next 8 months trying to get our revenue? Why don't we plan that in advance across those 27 revenue streams? That's how we should do it.
Sorry, I kind of have 2 questions. A follow-up for Mr. Hope. Do you have some examples of what kinds of those alternative 27 streams would be outside of like Kickstarter?
Well,
Like,
you know, like,
create an audience.
it's always plagued me, you know, that as a avid film lover, I don't have a way to demonstrate my love of cinema, right? What can I do? I can go out and buy the Stanley Kubrick archive from Taschen and leave it on my coffee table, right? I can have old film posters along the way. We're not in the physical goods, you know, business at all, except in action figures for fanboy films, right? But movies, you know, whether it's clothes or artwork, you know, you see artists now, places like China, even in America, who create video work, and they have sculptural pieces that are in their film that they then sell in limited numbers. Kickstarter, you know, for instance, we call it a crowdfunding platform, but it's really a pre-sale and goods platform, right? Where you buy experiences as well as advanced copies of the film. When we come to TIFF, how come when the music industry has learned that most of their revenue comes from merch, we don't have a merch market where all the filmmakers can have a live Kickstarter experience, and when I go and see the Lunchbox and I'm, you know, think this filmmaker is hot shit, I can't take him out for lunch for $500 and put some money into his pocket. You know, where are those sort of things that can be done? We have believed that it's good enough to entertain people for 90 minutes. And I'm sorry, when time is our most precious commodity, we have to deliver a bigger return than just that. And we need to somehow give people those physical mementos, those bigger experiences along the way. But if I went through all 27, I wouldn't be able to charge my consultancy fees.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Oh, I have a quick question.
Another question. I'm sorry, but we have only 5 minutes, one per person. Yes, yes, that guy, and then behind him. Yeah.
Hi, I'm James Stewart. I'm a producer-director, Geneva Film Company in Toronto. I have a project called Foxed, which is a stop-motion animated film. And we have a proof of concept. We have a first draft script. The proof of concept is a short film, and it's on the festival circuit. It's winning awards and doing very well. My challenge with the valuation of the film, so imagine it's Coraline, okay? It's that kind of film. If you're in Canada, which you guys are not, but we are, it's a $1.5 million film. If you talk to the European co-producers, it's a $10 million film. And if you talk to the studio distributors, they won't look at anything under 50. So if Tom Hanks is in it, it's 50. if, you know, my friends are in it, it's a $1 million film. So the question is, how do you evaluate the film, and how do you answer that question when people say, you know, what's the budget of the film? Because it does range. We all know you can shoot a feature for 5,000 with a 5D, or you can shoot it for 10 million.
I think you already have your answer, because there's many different models. You've just given 6 of them. So you have to see where you net out, and you can go down that road. I mean, you could try and get Tom Hanks, or you could say that's probably not realistic, and try and think if you've demonstrated 3 or 4 realistic versions. So you need to get in all that data and then go for one plan A, and if plan A doesn't work out, go for plan B or C.
Okay, so it depends who's asking.
Yeah.
But another way to value your film is, I assume it's for a young audience. I might be wrong, but I assume it's for a young audience. And the challenge of a young audience is to get them to see the movie. You also have to speak to their parents. You have to reach the widest group, and so you're going to have to spend a tremendous amount of money marketing it along the way. So that really becomes the question of to get those people in the theaters, how much is it going to cost? Because we don't have very many specialized children or family films made for a low budget that go on to have great success, because it costs so much money. And then you really do need to justify that with Tom Hanks and, you know, well-known brands, you know, whether it's Henry Selick, who had trouble getting his next movie made after Coraline, you know, or Neil Gaiman. You need those elements that convince people along the way.
The other thing, because you're in Canada, is to go to a broadcaster, especially for children's content, if it is a children's film, because Canada does have a pretty good broadcast record with children's new product. So I would thought to bring a broadcaster on board, which would test its value in the market a little bit, and you bring them on as a co-producer.
And that's exactly, there's a film that's been, the filmmakers have been writing about on my blog, hopeforfilm.com, called Wastelander Panda, which is outside, it's made in Australia, and it's a post-apocalyptic film about a panda and his boy kind of moving through the wasteland. And they did a proof of concept, you know, actually 3 of them. They were able to generate over 100,000 views on Vimeo with their 3-minute shorts, and that got them a deal with an Australian broadcaster to do the full-on series. You know, so you know that you're going to have a lifetime of making great films, right? This is just one of the many films that you will make. You know, so I would argue perhaps stop trying to get to that $10 million budget and recognize what you have the ability to do right now, get it made really well, and then when you too are a brand like Neil Gaiman and Henry Selick, you'll get that $10 million and still have to cast Tom Hanks and have Brian finance it.
All right, maybe one more question. Oh, I had already told him, and then you after. I'm sorry, but I already.
Thank you, Sydney. John Kelly. I'm a lawyer and a film finance consultant, and I wondered about, for independent filmmakers, the high hurdle at the packaging stage of a pay-or-play deal, if the panel could discuss that.
About pay-or-play, I just wouldn't do it.
Never do it.
Yeah,
never
do
do it. I think even on big films, I think people always say you have to do pay-or-play. I have never done pay-or-play in my life.
Can you explain, Andrew, for some of the people in the audience?
Pay-or-play is supposed to be you sign an actor, and even if the film doesn't happen, you're supposed to pay the agent for the fee to the actor. It's just it's a blackmail thing that agents try to use to get you to get the talent. If an actor really wants to do a project and you've got a great script, they will do it. The pay-or-play, I think, is irrelevant. So I think you should resist it at all costs.
And there's a lawyer who can represent all your material.
But frequently, the reason a pay-or-play is asked for is because the financiers or the actors don't yet believe in the filmmaking team. That's often the case. So what you want to then do is get Andrew to come aboard and produce your movie, and then the actors won't require having the pay-or-play deal. Some of the packaging sometimes isn't just the stars director and the script, but also the producer. Yeah,
It's and even from the agency, Hassan, from the agency perspective, it's a comfort level for the agents. I don't represent myself, actors, but the agents want to be comforted too. So yes, having a producer that they believe in, that they've worked with before, is comforting enough.
Last question.
Sometimes.
This is for the whole panel. My name is Asanda from South Africa, filmmaker. So you spoke about a niche market, and anyone in the panel. So are sales agents awake to that niche market now? Because for $1 million, we could make something quite nice in South Africa. I mean, you could see number and what the budget was for. So are sales agents awake to that? Because we could make stuff for that kind of money, but to sell in North America.
Niche market, I don't know. You want to answer this one?
And then also just one or two examples of what the platforms are of that niche market.
Yes, I'll answer the first part, which is, yes, South Africa has great funds and there's great opportunity to finance films there. Again, that just gives you the opportunity to finance your film without needing a lot of this extra we're talking about, which everyone loves. You don't necessarily if you have a great amount of soft money or tax money or state money or regional funding. So that's an opportunity for you to shoot your movie. Again, there you need the director, the writer. You need a lot of elements. And then, with respect to your system, I'm not quite sure how you want to answer that one.
I think you have to recognize that we're in this major paradigm shift right now, where the industry, the infrastructure, is built for mass market, not for niche audiences. And a result of that, that I've recently spoken to helped a couple sales agents, well-established, world-leading sales agents, who basically have specialized films that can sell in 10 territories. And then when they sell in the other territories or give away or take a small fee because of relationships they have in the past, those films don't end up being available on digital platforms. And so they're in this quandary right now where what do we do? How do we get into these other territories and get it up on all the different digital platforms that are there? They're not set up for that. It's really, actually, I would argue that they're not going to be, that they will not survive, right? And there's a major shift afoot, being able to work with the appropriate digital platforms in each territory. But we too, filmmakers, all of us, are also to blame, right? That right now we all work solely for ourselves. There's no community perspective of a bigger picture. And so what do? We create that Facebook page, Twitter feed, website for our individual film and bring people together. And you start to look at things, forces like Oprah, right, who brought folks together and knew her audience and could gather them, whether it's on thematic level, action, call to action, or a demographic, and feed them the content, the culture that is the glue to keep them together. And if we brought people together, if 6 of you filmmakers who made romantic comedies and 6 of you filmmakers who made movies about social justice did not just go out and make your website for just yourself, but you worked together to build a community that stayed together, you would have 250,000 people gathered who wants the 7th film, 8th film, and 9th film in the same thematic or demographic or call to action. So how do we gather those niche audiences together and give them a better return on the investment of their engagement, right? We have to recognize that the film industry thrived for years because it was the best dating mechanism that we ever had, right? That we had a shared emotional response and we had pre-programmed conversation afterwards to help understand who the other person is. And unfortunately, the internet is a better dating device than movies are now. And we have to help people, once again, learn how to talk and get a better return, like a second date, when they see the movie. That's the future of the film business.
I think our time is up. I have no one saying it is. It is. Okay. Thank you ever so much for attending. Thank you.